So there were quite a few berserkers that I was looking at doing. Kiyohime is a very popular one that people are wanting me to cover, but I was kind of leaning more towards like Spartacus because he's also really good and he's kind of like everybody's first farmer. But instead of doing Spartacus, I was like, you know what? Let me do Lubu, because Lubu is one of those servants that, like, yeah, he's like really simple and he's very straightforward, kind of just like a nuke, right? You just point him in a direction, he does insane damage, and then you gotta wait for his skills to kind of come back for him to do that same level of damage again. But he's like just one of those servants that I think a lot of new players should be aware of if you don't have like the right DPS for whatever mission you're doing. Say you don't got a good single target Lancer and you gotta go fight this Archer. Well, don't worry, buddy. Just slap in a Lubu, that free waiver you got, and I don't know, like a friend Merlin or just another waiver, and you're going to be cooking your enemies quick, fast, and in a hurry, especially waiver, because Lubu has his own defensive skill, and those defensive skills add into each other to actually make this berserker a little tanky. But before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. Also, I stream every weekday over on my Twitch at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is going to be in the description if you want to check that out. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive straight into this video. And honestly, with a lot of these old servants, if there's not like an exception, I really don't think we really need to talk about their hits. You guys should know the deal by now. We're like, what, 7 episodes deep into this series? These old low star servants have absolutely terrible hits. I mean, they usually have really high NP gain to kind of compensate for their like low 2 to 3 hit, maybe if they're lucky, arts and quick cards. But in Lubu's case, it's actually kind of worse because he's a berserker, and around this time when they were starting the game, most berserkers just have a triple buster deck to maximize on the fact that they're super effective against every other attribute in the game. And so while that's really good for damage, it does mean that he'll kind of struggle a little bit when it comes to NP gain. Although someone like Tomamovich will definitely help him out a lot. The fact that she has just a 50% targetable battery and she gives you NP refund on her own NP, that is definitely going to help this guy out specifically when she comes out to the NA version of the game. If you're on JP, you can already test this out and it's quite fun, if I do say so myself. But literally the main thing you need to know with Lubu and his hits is that if you can get a crit on the arts card, which isn't impossible because of his third skill, you can refund a decent bit of NP, but realistically, you're just going to be pounding your enemies with buster cards, and whenever you get to that NP, you're going to nuclear bomb your opponents back into the Stone Age. That being said, let's go ahead and start talking about his skills. Now, one interesting thing about Lubu is that you absolutely must activate his first skill before his second skill. So you look at his first skill, he's getting 27% attack for 3 turns. Obviously, it's a really old servant, so for whatever reason, he's got 27%. Please, Lasengo, come back and just round this up to like 30% and then give him like 30 or 50% crit damage for 3 turns. Please, I am begging you. But still, it'll get the job done. 27% attack is still like decent. It's better than a charisma at the very least. And he also gets a 36% mental debuff resistance buff for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. That basically means he has insulated protection against going night-night, against, having his skills sealed, against getting stunned, charmed, all that good stuff, which is really important for a boss-killing servant like this. If you don't kill the boss, with your first NP, or let's say you break their break bar, and then on break bar they charm a random enemy, we do have bosses that do that, you actually have a chance to go ahead and whiff that debuff and kind of keep yourself able to stay in the fight. Keep in mind, he also does have a 10% passive buster buff as well, so he's also got that going for him when it comes to just kind of constant damage that he's going to be having up, because he'll pretty much always have the attack and mental debuff resistance up. This is like one of those things that anytime it's available, you should probably click it. But as we look at his second skill, you have to do it before you use the second skill. That 25% defense for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown is really strong, but it does cripple his chances of getting offensive buff. So you have to activate this skill last. I say the first skill more importantly because at the very least, the first skill is up for 3 turns. The third skill is only up for 1. Although again, you don't want to lose the third skill because the third skill is a huge NP damage buff. I guess we'll talk about that right now. It's 30% NP damage for 1 turn and massive 3,000 star weight for 1 turn as well, with the demerit being that your other 2 party members are going to take a 20% reduction to their defense for that turn on a 6-turn cooldown. And so yeah, you really do want to get the first and third skill because those 2 different damage types will multiply into each other. and you don't want to whiff it on the second skill. Now, it's not impossible to get his first and third skill if you do click the second skill by accident first. You know, I fat-fingered clicking my phone with FGO sometimes that I messed up, so it basically just cuts your chances of getting your own offensive buffs in half. This doesn't apply to like your other supports, so like your Koyanskayas, your Waivers, your Merlins, they are not affected by the second skill because it's his own offensive buff success rate. If it was his offensive buff success rate in general, I think this guy would kind of be a little dookie dog water, I'm not gonna lie. But the fact that it's just his own means that as long as you're kind of prudent and you're making sure that you got the first and third skill up before like you actually click and go ahead and go into the second skill, you'll be absolutely fine. And you'll be doing just massive amounts of damage. Speaking of damage, let's go ahead and talk about his NP. It's quite simple. It is literally a one-hit single target NP that pierces defense and has a 30 to 70% chance to stun them. So kind of like a Kentucky-esque effect where it technically contributes a little bit to his survivability, because if he's able to stun the enemy, that means they're not going to actually hit him. And if they're not hitting him, they're not doing damage. Thus, he lives a little bit longer. I would like to see this get buffed a little bit and maybe just give him like 20% Buster for 3 turns. That'd be like really nice with that passive skill, technically making a 30% Buster buff for 3 turns. I think something like that would be really good because not only would it like allow him to kind of stack Buster buffs if you're able to fire subsequent NPs, but it also gives him a third damage type that he can really start beefing up, because then you'd have like a really solid attack buff, really solid Buster buff, and he'd have a really solid NP damage buff. Although I would also like to see that NP damage buff get buffed up to 3 turns as well, so it's a bit more consistent for him. Granted, since he has the triple Buster deck, even after you lose the NP damage buff, it's not as big of a deal, because again, he could still do really good damage with his just Buster face cards. But overall, this guy is really, really solid. He's very straightforward. He's one of those servants that I think a lot of people should use. Probably gets overshadowed a little bit by Mori, because Mori's also a 3-star servant berserker. But Mori's also not available all the time, and if you do miss out on getting Mori, Lu Bu's just definitely a really solid option for you to go with. And because of funny lore reasons, they made Chen Gong work really well with Lu Bu. Not only can he taunt other people to keep people off of attacking Lu Bu, he gives them extra defense, gives them a little bit of a battery, and basically has Merlin's hero creation specifically for berserkers. And would you look at that, Lu Bu is a berserker. Now, is this one of those low star legends that like everybody needs to level up? Probably not, because once you're more further along in FGO and you start getting more and more DPS servants, your need for Lu Bu is probably going to lessen and lessen, because you'll get other DPS servants that have like batteries, are more consistent, don't have the weird issue of the second skill, you know, stuff like that. But still, as a new player, this guy can be definitely very, very helpful. Again, he is a 3-star, so he's relatively easy to level up. The only thing that's kind of annoying is that this guy needs a lot of Void Dust. Like, he needs 32 per skill and 16 for his 4th Ascension. It's a little bit ridiculous. In fact, this guy's the reason why I'm currently out of Void Dust. So thanks, Lu Bu. I really appreciate it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And with all that being said, I will catch you guys tomorrow in the next video. Peace, late guys.